Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jay, and I'm a terminally online historian. And every week I like to go through what I think the top stories of news were and give you my opinions on them. And unfortunately, we do have to start on a very tragic note this week, as there was unfortunately another school shooting up in Minneapolis, and there are two young children who are no longer going to get a chance to contribute to society when they get older. There were also 17 that were injured, and last reports I saw, they are on various stages of recovering. With most of them being children, I do expect a lot of mental health issues with them, as this is not something you really can mentally prepare for, and really shouldn't happen. I'm not going to be showing a picture of the shooter, Robert Westman, as part of her motive was to try to become notorious, and I do not want to give her the pleasure of that. She did take her own life at the end of the shooting. What I've seen in the profile of the suspect is that she was obsessed with mass shootings and wanted to cause harm to children. And she also apparently just went through a really messy breakup in the last couple of months with her most recent partner. So definitely some mental health issues that could have been addressed. I should note that the weapons were purchased legally. And it looks like on the web and magazines there were anti-Trump, anti-Semitic, and anti-Catholic markings on them. I will say, yes, I do recognize that she was transgendered, but that does not, her actions do not reflect the general non-binary transgender community. Yeah, I know that toward the end she said she wanted to detransition, and that does happen. Yeah, some folks try being transgender for a while and realize that it's not them, and they may have made a mistake, and so they detransition. But most of the time, when you see someone who's transgender transitioning, it's actually more because where they work and live is openly hostile to the non-binary transgender community, and so they detransition and go back to their assigned gender at birth, just to protect themselves from harassment. And in our community, we call that going stealth. So that's about the shooter. Again, we have the same difference between the Republicans and the Democrats about what the solution to this problem was: mass shootings, and especially at schools. And with the GOP saying that its mental health needs to be addressed, and the Democrats are advocates for common sense gun control. And the thing is, both sides are right. We do need common sense gun control, and we also need more sources and funding for mental health care, especially for the LGBTQ plus community. I will also note that while I am a gun owner myself, there is no logical or sensible reason to own an AR-15 style rifle. When I was in Sea Cadets, I learned how to use those weapons the correct way, and I can assure you that an AR-15 based rifle platform is not the best option for home defense. You're better off with a handgun or a shotgun. Even standard infantry tactics in urban combat with the Marine Corps and the Armies actually prefers at the point person who enters a building first, their fire team use a shotgun and not their M4 or M16. So again, we also need to have a paradigm shift in regards to those who are trying to seek mental health care, and this needs to come from the top down. We need to stop calling people with mental health losers, or that they don't know what they're doing, or that they just need to suck it up. We need to give them support. We need, like, hey, it's okay, you're having some issues. Let's get you help. And like I said, this needs to start at the top down. The president needs to support mental health programs. Uh, the Secretary of Health Human Services, and on down. It just needs to be supported from and top down, and that's the best way to do it in this country. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And I'm going to move on now to Ukraine, and the big news this week was there were another round of missile attacks on Kyiv this past Thursday. And what's important to note about this is that some of the targeted buildings included EU and United Kingdom diplomatic missions and their facilities that got hit. And again, well, the EU and UK spoke out and expressed their displeasure at Putin for doing that. Trump still did not do anything, just sat on his hands. In fact, this is why there's something we'll discuss in a little bit, why he's basically not addressing the public at all on Thursday. Basically, in general, Trump is just doing absolutely nothing to help Zelensky get a meeting with Putin. And shockingly, Trump doesn't think that Putin wants to meet with Zelensky, and I actually have to agree. I think Putin's just trying to get as much land and as much concessions as possible before he's either forced to end the war or is removed from office. Although, with that happening, also on the 28th, a Billion M-class corvette of the Russian Navy suffered a massive drone strike. You can look up the video on YouTube. It's actually pretty incredible how they did it. Using the drones first, knocking out its radars, and then just assaulting the hull to a point where that ship had to retreat. So for those of you who don't know about what a corvette is, it's smaller than a frigate, but larger than a patrol boat. These Billion M class corvettes, they can carry 8 caliber cruise missiles and vertical launch systems. And basically, the Caliber cruise missile is Russia's equivalent to our Tomahawk cruise missile over here in the United States. And this is interesting and actually a development in the naval war between the Russian Navy and Ukraine, which still does not have a navy. They just use drones for everything. So Russia had ceded control of the Black Sea to Ukraine, especially after the destroyer Moskva was sunk by drones in the middle of the Black Sea. And so what they did is they pulled all their ships out of the Black Sea and threw the Church Strait into the Sea of Azov, which is basically basically a minor sea, kind of really more like a bay, honestly. That's on the north side of the Kerch Peninsula, Kerch Strait, which is the strait between mainland Russia and the Crimean Peninsula, because they view the Sea of Azov as a safe place to operate their ships and launch those Caliber cruise missiles from those corvettes and destroyers. But yeah, now this attack on that Billion class corvette is going to force Russia to rethink how they use their naval forces, because if drones are able to not just get you in the Black Sea, but also fly over occupied Ukrainian territory and hit ships in the Sea of Azov, then that's going to cause some issues in the long run. Again, Russia still is still feeling a bit of pain at the pump as Ukraine keeps up its efforts to violently dismantle Russia's oil infrastructure. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but Russia is almost solely reliant on its oil industry for income, especially with all these sanctions that have occurred. They even have an entire shadow fleet of ships that Russia owns but are flagged in other countries, namely Uganda, that illegally ships the oil out to far-flung places that just want to get the oil. But without oil production in Russia, then Russia can't do anything, really. They're that reliant on it. At this time, reports are mixed. It is estimated that, when I was preparing this yesterday, that oil production in Russia is down about 17-20%, so they're about 80% of capacity at this time. Now, I do expect the Ukraine to keep up with this assault on the oil refineries, on oil pipelines and whatnot. I do think this is a very wise and smart strategy, because if you go back to history, and especially looking at what was going on in 1916, 1917 Russia, leading up to the Spring Revolution, with ousted the Romanovs, it was food shortages that started affecting the rural populations, and they just got fed up with it, flooded into Moscow and St. Petersburg, and overthrew the Romanov government and the Duma at that time. And clearly, Zelensky and his staff and planners have learned from history, but instead of targeting food sources, they're a bit more humane, and they're just substituting going after the oil structure and causing oil shortages. At this stage, I think that if oil production falls below 65-70% of full capacity, and Russia is not able to keep up with repairs and whatnot, we're going to start seeing protests build, and the Russian population start demanding action from Putin. A few weeks ago, I was talking about the South China Sea, and there have been some very, very, very interesting developments. I'd like to thank the What's Up with Shipping YouTube channel for bringing this to my attention. Sal over there has a couple of great videos and footage of these events that I'm going to be talking about. So this all started back on August the 11th in the South China Sea, in, I will say, what is definitely Filipino waters, unlike what China is claiming that they're theirs, but they were definitely Filipino waters. So what was happening, there's just a Filipino Coast Guard cutter out there doing routine patrolling, when all of a sudden they start getting chased down by a Chinese Coast Guard cutter, as well as a Chinese Navy destroyer. Well, both the destroyer and the Chinese Coast Guard cutter are making very aggressive moves, trying to chase down that Filipino Coast Guard cutter. And the destroyer decided to make an aggressive, almost ramming motion into the Filipino vessel, and the Chinese Coast Guard cutter just rammed at full speed right into that destroyer's port hull around the anchors, completely flattening the bow of that cutter to the first watertight bulkhead, forcing the Chinese cutter to come to a full stop. The Chinese destroyer did make a couple more aggressive moves before it went back to assist the cutter that had ran into it, and the Filipino cutter just, after offering assistance, got the hell up out of Dodge. So, of course, it was clearly the Chinese fault that all that happened, as they were in Filipino waters when they should not have been trying to force out the Filipinos from their own EEZ. But, of course, China's not taking responsibility. And because of that, the United States sent a couple of our destroyers through the South China Sea in the weeks following, doing what is known as freedom of navigation operation, basically like, hey, these are international waters, China, and we're going to go right through it. And, of course, Chinese destroyers were following those destroyers as well, claiming, and then once the U.S. Navy completed their operation, the Chinese, of course, claimed that it was they had chased them out. So, yeah, this is completely starting to get out of control. So I also did want to mention that it looks like our our Vietnamese friends are taking a page out of the Chinese playbook and starting to develop their part of the Spratly Islands into naval bases and whatnot. China has long done this in their disputed waters, just because they're like, oh yeah, we got Petroleum Islands, it makes it easier to justify our claim. Well, now Vietnam is basically copy and pasting that strategy, and you're like, oh, China, you want to do that? Hey, we can do it. It does. We can do it too. We got the resources. So basically, I'm starting to get a little more concerned about potential war. It's probably sooner than later in the South China Sea. It definitely looks like the tensions between China and ASEAN nations and their allies are they're just getting more. It's just the tensions are increasing. I do think that China is becoming more aggressive now because they believe that between the Epstein Files issue as well as the Ukrainian war, they think that believe that the United States are being distracted by that, so they can just increase their operations trying to enforce their illegitimate claims on South China Sea. Also, I believe that they see MAGA's worldview as a sign, especially with international affairs, as a sign that they can they have the green light to get aggressive, which is why we're seeing that increase right now. All right, and you was probably perked up when I said Epstein, but yes, we do have an update, or really we don't. So the files that were subpoenaed by the Congress, well, there was a first file dump, and it was mostly the same stuff. FBI and DOJ are really dragging their feet in complying with that subpoena from the House Oversight Committee. So I'm expecting Tuesday, when Congress is back in session, that the House Oversight Committee is probably going to censure the Attorney General and the FBI Director and basically be like, hey, look, we're censoring you, we're summoning you to come and testify, and we want all those files when you show up. Furthermore, and this is a very interesting twist, which I'm not sure many folks have noticed, but a couple days ago, Georgia Representative Mike Collins from the 10th Congressional District there was caught on a hot mic saying that he knows for sure Trump is in the Epstein Files. But what's interesting is that Trump's in the Epstein Files because Trump ratted out Epstein to the police. And this is an interesting twist. But it also corroborates something that Michael Wolff has said about a month ago regarding Epstein, and that is that back in the early 2000s, there was basically Trump and Epstein had a falling out over a property in Palm Beach that Epstein wanted and to purchase and renovate, and asked Trump for advice about the pool. Trump learned how much Epstein's bid was, because of course Epstein told him. And then he submitted his own bid, which was more than Epstein's, and Trump got the house. Well, the thing is, Epstein, according to Michael Wolff, Epstein's like, dude, where do you get the money? You ain't got money. Because Trump told, of course, Epstein knew everything about Trump's finances. So he suspected it was potentially a money laundering scheme, especially after Trump flipped the house like a year or two later and sold it for more. So basically, Epstein's theory was the falling out happened, that's when it started, and then Trump got scared because he knew that Epstein knew everything about his finances and rightly suspected that Epstein figured it was going to be a money laundering scheme. Who was going to rat out who first, and Trump basically ratted out Epstein before Epstein had a chance to rat out Trump. Now, I will restate that this does not mean that Trump is innocent of any crimes of sexual nature against minors, because he is still credibly accused of essaying a young lady when she was 13. There was a civil lawsuit about it that She dropped in 2016, just right before that election. So that's the latest there. Yes, we got an issue in that Trump's health it's slowly but certainly getting worse. There's new bruising on his left hand that's been seen. What's interesting is he went pretty much almost basically 2.5, 3 days without a public appearance before yesterday, in which nobody saw him. There was still activity on his social media, but there was speculation that he may have passed away, but he has been seen at golf courses yesterday and today. So that's still getting concerning. Also, Vice President J.D. Vance is appearing to be chomping at the bit. He mentioned in a USA Today interview earlier this week that he's ready to step at the plate should something happen to Trump. He also stated that Trump was in excellent health, so it's a bit of doublespeak there. But anyway, let's end this on a happy note, whether you're a Chiefs fan or like me, or you're a Swiftie. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are now engaged. It looks like this engagement happened a few weeks ago in Leawood, which is one of the Johnson County suburbs of Kansas City, if you're not familiar with that area, where Kelce does have a home. And it being in Leawood makes sense, as since beginning of this month, the Chiefs have been in preseason play, and the training facility in Kansas City next to Arrowhead is only about 20 minutes from Leawood. So it makes sense that they would be in Leawood at that time. If you saw the August 13th New Heights podcast episode where Taylor did drop her new album, you could tell that they are definitely a happy couple, definitely very much into each other. And I think that's because they have a lot of similarities in their backgrounds. They are both from families that started in the middle class and got to where they are now. They're both from basically working class cities, with Taylor being from Philadelphia and Travis being from Cleveland. So they also seem to have very similar values. And more importantly, especially for Taylor, unlike her previous boyfriends, Travis is just as supportive of her career as she is of his. I mean, look at last summer during the European leg of the Eras Tour. Travis went to as many shows as he could before he had to report to training camp, and even got on stage with her as once. Now, do I expect this to affect the Chiefs this season with Travis being happily engaged to Taylor? Not really. I think that Travis is going to be extremely focused. Although, yes, he has started showing his age the past couple of seasons, I think he wants to win one more Super Bowl before he retires. And I'm also not worried about the tight end play, because Noah Gray, tight end number 2 for the Chiefs after Kelce, has stepped it up the past few seasons. Has become one of my favorite players to watch. And I do think that Travis does want to get one more ring, and he wants to retire with his last game being a Super Bowl win for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, with all that said, that is my thoughts for what I think are probably some of the most important stories of the week that ended on August the 31st. I hope that you like this video. Please subscribe, share this with someone you think is interested in this kind of stuff. If you wish to comment, please do so, but also be kind to each other, as we just are all trying to get through life. And I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I will see you next time.